Hi, Ted. How are you?
Douglas, how are you? It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. So, we're going to talk about money today, right? And
Yeah,
why are most people good or bad with money? I know it's a generalization.
yeah.
And
Well, I do this for a living. I've been a professional for a long time, and my wife keeps a logbook of my dubious money spending, and I'm been licensed and have degrees, and I get it wrong. So that's a bit of a flippant answer, but in our culture, the United States primarily, we generally do not handle money well, and the data supports it. Credit card debt, uh, bankruptcies, domestic problems, substance abuse, a lot of that is tied to bad money decisions. And as a culture, we don't seem to put a priority on it. We don't teach it in schools. And most people really do not understand how money works. And unfortunately, it's becoming much more complex than it was just a few years ago.
well, it's interesting that we are the wealthiest nation on earth. And then on the other side, we probably are not the best in managing our wealth. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And one of the key differentiator is a lot of people confuse wealth and money. Money is the fuel that makes the economy work. It lets you do things. Wealth is what you have left over after spending. And it amazes me how many people miss that point. Uh, I mean, I get asked all the time what kind of car I drive because they just make assumptions as to what I drive. I drive a 2008 Mercury Mariner that I bought old, and it's got 180,000 miles on it. And it's good transportation. So, what I'm not spending on a vehicle, I put other places, and that generates wealth. That's a difference.
Let's get to some of the things that people can do rather than concentrate on what people doing that they shouldn't be doing.
Right.
What's if you had to give some advice to somebody who was, struggling paycheck to paycheck, never seems to have enough money, debt, what would you suggest that they do first?
Wow. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with that have been in that situation. And as a matter of fact, as a young lieutenant in the Marine Corps, one of my responsibilities was to try to help my young Marines and young Marine families make better money choices. And I found that one, they didn't have any training. Their level of financial literacy was abysmal. They got caught up in the moment. When I mean, we were stationed in Hawaii, expensive place. So they felt they had to live that lifestyle. Bad choice. And when we actually got into their spending patterns, I found that behavior was more important than money. And that stuck with me. And let me explain what I mean by that. By the time I retired, I taught economics at the Naval Academy and watched smart kids do really dumb things with money. I was an aide to the Secretary of the Navy for financial management and watched our elected officials and bureaucrats do incredibly crazy things with money. And then as a full-time financial advisor, I built my own firm. I worked with hundreds of people that were making the same money mistake. And it became obvious to me that if I was going to give anybody advice with money, it's number one, benchmark who you are, your money temperament, how you think and feel about money. That is critical. Once you understand how you naturally react to money, your natural spending pattern, are you a spender? Are you a saver? Are you a maximizer, sufficer, a risk adverse, a risk taker? That will dictate and bias all your spending decisions. And nobody's talking about this. And as a matter of fact, because nobody's talking about this, that's why I wrote my current book, Discovery of Money Temperament, and got into what I'm doing right now to try to change the focus from stuff and what the financial industry is putting out. If you just have the right product, the right service, if you trade more, if you fill in the blank, when in reality, you're going to be much better off if you figure out how you naturally behave with money and then design a money strategy that complements your natural money behavior as opposed to trying to fight against it. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I'm going to ask you for an example, and I'll give you the scenario of a person who is the spender. So, what do
Okay.
you do for him?
Okay, let's take the spender saver. And what I defend it as a spender is a person who gets emotional satisfaction out of spending money. They form a group. They either go together. They enjoy being online and spending money. When they're depressed, they like to go spend money. They go shopping. The mall is a very comfortable place for them. So it's almost entertainment. So as opposed to the person who's a saver who gets more emotional satisfaction from watching their account grow to managing the assets. Now, most people are not at the extremes. Extreme saver, extreme spender. To me, an extreme spender is the person that is living paycheck to paycheck, always under emotional stress. And remember, you can be just as broke on $300,000 a year as you can on 30. You just have nicer stuff you can't afford. You know what I mean?
Well
then on
put.
the other extreme, you've got the skinflint, the person that is so obsessed with saving money and building assets to the detriment of their health, the well-being of their family, whoever. So most people are not like that. And if you fall into those categories, you probably need professional help. What I'm saying is, as humans, we're not naturally hardwired to work well with money. It's our biology. Our biology evolved over eons to keep us alive in the forest, but it's killing us at the mall, if that makes sense. So we do a lot of things non-consciously that are instantaneous, and money falls into that category. 95 to 99% of our spending is non-conscious, automatic, and instantaneous. We don't even think about it. So when we forced in a consequential spending decision, if we do it emotionally, it's going to get us into trouble. So we never seem to factor that in because the financial services industry itself and the way we teach finance and financial wellness and economics and all that kind of good stuff assumes we're rational. Well, how many rational people do you really know? No, we're human and we're going to do human things. And you think about it. If you compare spending money to diet and exercise, we understand that diet and exercise is emotional, that you should have a coach. You should have somebody to hold you accountable. You should have a support group. But we don't do the same thing with money. But as humans, emotionally, it's the same thing. So to go back to your original question, what's my advice? Benchmark who you are with money. I call it your money temperament. Are you a spender? Are you a saver? Are you risk adverse or risk taker? Are you a maximizer or sufficer? And then don't beat yourself up over it. Accept who you are. Use that as the starting point to build your strategy and your spending plan around your natural money behavior. We don't teach this. You don't get this from financial advisors, and you don't get it from the talking head gurus on TV.
So if somebody who is a spender, they're going to have to cut down, presumably, right?
Presumably. Let me give you an example of a real client I had who didn't realize that she was a spender. With the meeting with her, and we're talking about her putting money away for her retirement plan, and that she was very proud of herself that she maxed out her program, which was about $12,000 she'd set aside. And for a lot of folks, that is commendable. But the point was she was netting $250,000 a year. So she was quite taken back. Then I said, you are a spender. Because she spent everything up to that $249,000. You know what I mean?
Right.
And she had all the trappings to go with it. We got to start talking. What I ended up doing with her is building a strategy that made it easy to save and difficult to spend. That we put things on autopilot, that all our bills were paid automatically up front. All our long-term planning was done up front, out of her hands on autopilot. So at the end of the month, once everything is paid, what was left in her account was hers. And to be very candid, we didn't care what she did with it. And that made a significant difference.
And then what about the other side of the coin?
The person, old McScrooge, for those that remember the Disney
Yes.
comic book carriers. Yeah. That behavior can be just as disruptive and dysfunctional. And to my mind is the person who the news brings on every now and then. They're living in a rundown house, eating cat food, and when they pass away, they bequeath, millions of dollars to their local church or whatever. And we get excited about that's noble. I say that's a bit of an issue. what the trick with your behavior is, one, understand what it is, and then strike a reasonable balance that you have emotional stability, you've got your health, your physical well-being is taken care of, you're a contributing member to your family and community, and you're not putting undue pressure on yourself because of money. So that sometimes means you're an average guy in an average neighborhood as opposed to an average guy in a place you can't afford to be, if that makes sense. Driving too much car, the dopamine you get for having that vehicle wears off, and all of a sudden you realize that the insurance payments and the car payments are more than you can afford, and you end up walking a week out of the month. That's the difference between understanding what makes you tick with money, your natural money temperament, and the reality of your behavior. The trick is to align the two. I don't judge. If you're a spender, that's fine, but let's grasp that reality and build a plan that accommodates the fact that you are emotionally attuned, you like to spend, and that's okay, but we're going to give you kind of an allowance. On the other hand, if you're this kind of curmudgeon kind of person who lives in a cardboard box someplace and saves all your pennies and cans and all that kind of stuff, we've got to explain to you that it's okay to live a little bit, that it's okay to have a life. Now, again, those are extremes. Most people fall somewhere in the middle, but it's easy to get wrapped in, as I said, the culture, the spending habits, and technology in modern society makes it so easy to spend and so hard to save.
I want to bring up the frugal guy again, because my grandfather was very, very much like that. He was a product of the Depression. And the one thing that he fought against, I think, his entire life was credit cards.
Yes.
And, you know, back in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, credit cards were not a major issue in people's lives. People paid cash or they wrote checks, and that was about it. Once the 70s, 80s started to come in, he found himself at a disadvantage not having a credit card. And he refused to get one to the day he died.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent example of a cultural and a behavioral influence. I was talking to a guy on the phone yesterday that we're doing some business with, and he is debt-free and has been for years, and he couldn't get a business loan because he doesn't own a credit card. You have to be aware of your, and again, culture, your surroundings, your environment. I call this situational awareness. You can have a credit card, but it has to be used responsibly. You have to understand what it's for and what it's not for. The other thing you have to understand is human nature again. And I'm going to use an example of how we look at money, tangible money, different than credit card, debit cards, and checks. And you've got to be careful because this emotional behavioral difference can get you into trouble and you don't even know it. If you put $100 in your wallet or purse, you probably can carry that around for weeks and never spend it. But as soon as you break it, even into 250s or 20s or 10s, it tends to just dissipate.
It's gone. Yeah.
Because we look at money emotionally differently than we do a credit card or a debit card. We don't have that same visual, that attachment to a credit card as we do with money. So with a credit card, it's perceived very, very differently. So now that technology is becoming much more of an enabler for us to spend, where you just need to pass your watch over a scanner, that level of accountability is not there. So it's almost like it's not my money. And as humans, we're not very good at making that transition from the very emotional, visual, tactile feeling of having money in our hand to having this electronic digital thing that just kind of flies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the human trait that we have. And I say through all my books, I talk about it in depth in Discover Your Money Temperament, that we as humans just are not hardwired to do the things that need to be done to manage money well. And you need a system, you need a methodology to make it work, because your biology, your belief set, and your culture conspire against you every time you're in a spending situation to either spend or save, overextend yourself or whatever. And you need to figure out for you to have a strategy that's going to accommodate that so you can be successful which to me, I define as having peace of mind in your chosen lifestyle.
I think on that note, we're going to have to wrap it up. Do you have a website that you want to give out so people can
Sure.
come check you out, check out the book?
Yep, tedmclyman.com. TEDMCLYMAN.com. And we've got a lot of good information on there. And I'd love to hear from you. Our goal is to change the world in the discussion about money to move it from products and services to behavior.
Great. Thanks so much, Ted, for coming on and enlightening us. Best of luck with everything you're doing.
Thanks so much, Douglas. I really appreciate it. This has been fun.
And I got to just say before we go that there is nothing quite like the smell of a fresh $100 bill. I think that's what turns people on. Credit cards have no smell at all. You know?
Yeah, they're kind of dirty and you got to spray them every now and then.
Yeah.